President prorogues Parliament, meets stakeholders. The fallen of the two great wars and other conflicts are remembered, and one of the world's largest petroleum companies is set to begin local operations. We'll have the details of these and other presidential activities in this week's edition of the Diary for the period November 8th to November 14, 2014. I'm Paul McAdam. Guyana joined the rest of the world on November 9 to observe Remembrance Day, also known as Poppy Day or Armistice Day, with 2 minutes of silence dedicated to the victims of the First and Second World Wars and other fallen soldiers from major conflicts. On the occasion, the head of state and commander-in-chief, President Donald Ramotar, led the country's Remembrance Day tributes by laying a wreath at the foot of the Cenotaph Monument in Georgetown.
We are forever indebted to them for their supreme sacrifice in the cause of peace and freedom. We also recall with gratitude those who, through the years, have made similar personal sacrifices in the continuing struggle for human dignity, social justice, and freedom from all forms of oppression, wherever these exist.
The example set by those who served and died strengthens the resolve of others to maintain efforts to ensure a peaceful world with justice and prosperity for all peoples, the President added.
On this solemn occasion, we, the citizens of the Republic of Guyana, rededicate ourselves to the search for peace everywhere and renew our commitment to the development and well-being of our beloved country. I ask that prayers be said.
Following the President's remarks, there were prayers by the three main religious groups, and the auspicious ceremony was marked with a march past at the corners of Main and Newmarket streets, where the President was given a full military salute. The Cenotaph is a war memorial and monument to Guyanese soldiers who lost their lives in the First and Second World Wars. Local soldiers also served and fought in far-off places such as Egypt, France, Belgium, and East Africa. President expresses sympathy on the sudden passing of renowned Bahamian religious leader. President Ramotar joined other regional leaders in expressing condolences to the family, relatives, and friends of the late Pastor Dr. Miles Monroe, who died in an aircraft accident in the Bahamas on November 9. The President said that it was with great sadness and shock that he learnt of the Learjet accident, which claimed the lives of the Bahamian motivational speaker and pastor along with his wife and 7 others. He recalled that government was happy to welcome Dr. Monroe locally when he was the keynote speaker at a national men's rally and leadership conference held in January of 2010. President Ramotar announced on November 10 that he issued the directive to prorogue or discontinue the session of the 10th Parliament of Guyana. This decision followed appeals by government and the head of state for a return to normalcy to constructively address the many important issues confronting Guyana, which the head of state said appeared to have fallen on deaf ears. The President indicated that the decision is consistent with his earlier position and in accordance with the powers conferred on him by Article 70, Chapter 1 of the Constitution of the Republic of Guyana.
I earlier today issued a proclamation proroguing the 10th Parliament. Fellow Guyanese, my decision to exercise this constitutional option was not taken lightly, but it was the sole recourse that was left to me to ensure that the life of the 10th Parliament was preserved.
The president recalled that during his national address on November 4, he indicated his government's desire for the National Assembly in its post-recess sittings to deliberate and give priority to several important matters.
I also extended a hand to the opposition for us to put the nation's business first rather than political gamesmanship.
He added that were he to be provided with reasons to believe that the parliamentary opposition intended to disrupt government's business by forcing a debate on their no-confidence motion, he resolved to respond immediately by exercising his constitutional options to either prorogue or dissolve Parliament, paving the way for the holding of general elections. He noted that the parliamentary opposition intended to end the life of the 10th Parliament with immediate effect, dashing all hopes for urgent attention to issues relating to economic growth, social services, and the holding of local government elections.
It is no secret that the parliamentary opposition parties had, at every conceivable opportunity, made known their clear intention to have their motion of no confidence against my government debated instantly at the first post-recess sitting, which was called for today, November 10th. Their one-seat majority in Parliament could only mean its passage and the immediate, irreversible dissolution of Parliament.
The decision of government to utilize this constitutional route and not go along with the debate, the President explained, lies in the practical choice between an atmosphere of confrontation, such as the no-confidence motion, which would fuel that, or that of possible accommodation, as a prorogued Parliament can facilitate if there is a genuine intent on all sides.
I also want to assure all that my decision ensures that the life of the 10th Parliament is preserved up to a maximum of 6 months, as permitted by the Constitution of Guyana. I pledge to you to have my administration use that time during the period of prorogation to continue to engage the parliamentary opposition in constructive ways in addressing the issues confronting Guyana. It is, however, my genuine desire to have the prorogation of the 10th Parliament ended sooner were my government and the opposition to reach an agreement for a return to normalcy. Further, were these entities of cooperation by my government to be unsuccessful, I would then take the necessary steps for the holding of early general elections so that the democratic will of our people can be freely exercised.
He vowed also to keep all stakeholders abreast of developments, adding that he took this step with the hope that with the time gained, it would be used to the benefit of all citizens. The local diplomatic community was briefed by the President on November 11 at the presidential complex. The head of state informed the foreign representatives of his decision to prorogue Parliament and provided them with copies of his address to the nation, along with the official gazette in which the proclamation to prorogue was published. President Ramatar also updated the officials on the current state of parliamentary affairs and clarified government's position and the way forward within the country's constitutional framework. He explained that his administration will use the time during the period to continue to attempt to engage the parliamentary opposition in constructive ways. The high-level meeting was attended by representatives of the diplomatic community along with senior cabinet officials. The meeting, which saw participation by a wide cross-section of civil society, featured frank and open discussions on the way forward for both sides of the political divide along with the rest of the Guyanese society. Some of the stakeholders shared their views after the close to 2-hour meeting on the head of state's decision and what they feel is the way forward.
I think what the whole nation would like to see is a response to the reasons that the President has given for proroguing Parliament. The reason the President has given for proroguing Parliament is to facilitate dialogue, to create a framework outside of the parliamentary confrontation that is inevitable. So he's done it. What he's done is perfectly within the constitutional right of a President. What we'd like to see, and much of the discussion that took place in there, was how can we facilitate that dialogue? Speaking from the point of view of the private sector and civil society, the Article 13 of our Constitution does provide for civil society to become directly involved in that dialogue. The very nature of politics is confrontational. The very nature is partisan. So introduce a bipartisan voice here. And civil society now has a responsibility of its own to offer its services, to get involved, to be present, and participate in facilitating that dialogue.
The President is very optimistic that dialogue will solve and take us out of this situation, and we encourage all parties at stake to facilitate such a dialogue. We in the private sector would like to see such a dialogue take place, but we will hope that it happens as quickly as possible so the Parliament can resume their functions.
The meeting with the President was a good initiative. I think it didn't tell us anything new other than what has happened in the past day and a half. And we are optimistic that, our politicians will put Guyana first and come up with a solution and a way forward. I think all of us are very concerned, and we look forward to some sort of resolution.
I think the meeting is in fact a good gesture on behalf of by the President, because he did say that he's going to call for civil society and have them informed of the rationale behind the decision taken. And he has done that. Now the next step is with civil society. We need to get together as civil society and see how best we can talk to the opposition and get the dialogue process commence.
President had used his constitutional right, and we hope the whole nation understand how we should resolve this peacefully.
As an entrepreneur, we don't want to see anything fail, or we don't want to see people in this position of who should rule and who shouldn't rule. We all have equal rights, but they should, like how we had a civil conversation just now, with everyone speaks their mind and they say what they think should happen. It should be held at the open, maybe the conference hall, I should suggest, or some way that everyone can attend and hear a public debate, rather than both of them in Parliament all the time and iron out issues that will not make any sense to them. Both sides think they're right.
President has the constitutional authority to prorogue Parliament. The spirit and the intent of the Constitution, that clause of the Constitution, is not for what if E and the AFC and the APNU get problems in Parliament. It is for some things that are more serious than that, right? If they have problems, then they have to go in Parliament and resolve those problems. We have given up some authority from we have given up authority to the parliamentarians, and we expect them to go there and work on our behalf. And if there are differences, then they will work towards resolving those differences at the sideline.
I don't know how we got here, but I think dialogue is definitely needed at this time. And rather than say this side is right and that side is wrong, I think all the politicians should come to their senses now, because there's a period of goodwill, man. We're getting into the season of Christmas and all this, and I think this is the time for them to more or less have a discussion and talk.
I think that we have to find a way to try and bring the parties together, because we need, as a country, we have to find a solution. Regardless of how we got to where we are, we need to find a way to get out of where we are, right? And the only way is by dialogue.
The President's decision ensures that the life of the 10th Parliament is preserved after a maximum of 6 months, as permitted by the Constitution. You're watching The Diary, where we have been recapping the highlights of the country's President's weekly activities. More after the break.
Pensioners will enjoy a 50% increase in assistance, bringing it to $30,000 per annum for pensioners who are customers of the Guyana Power and Light Company Incorporated. Further, old age pension is to be increased by 5% with effect from May 1, 2014 to $13,125 monthly, targeting the 42,500 senior citizens.
In an effort to respond more promptly to citizens, the Home Affairs Ministry has launched an online crime reporting system which allows citizens who possess or have access to cell phones, computers, or other devices with internet connections to report criminal activities. Citizens can get instant access to security personnel on BlackBerry Messenger via 280-4E429. Reports of corruption can also be made on www.ipaidthebribe.com. These reports can be made anonymously. Guyana is set to achieve the goal set by the United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF of universal birth registration by 2015. The General Register Office has launched an intensive campaign. It has decentralized its services to specifically cater to the needs of residents living in the interior location. Bedside registration is also done in several public hospitals. There are now 200 registration centers operating in 10 regions. Citizens are urged to ensure that all births are registered. On November 12th, one of the world's largest petroleum companies officially announced its plans for local operations. There are high expectations for Guyana becoming a petroleum-producing nation as Exxon Mobil formally announced its exploratory drilling plans offshore. The investment, which will see the company putting over $30 billion over a 7-year period into the local drilling sector, was welcomed by President Donald Ramotar as he attended a reception at the Pegasus Hotel.
We have been open towards good investments, and we rather prefer to have investment in our productive sector than the real economy. And this investment in that regard is very important, and hopefully that they will be successful very quickly. And Guyana will join the ranks of oil-producing countries. That is important because all the indications and all the conversation that I've been having suggest that the possibilities are good, the prospects are good, and to have a company of this reputation, I think it adds to our optimism. So I'm looking forward to. I think it's an exciting time, not only in our politics but in our economics and in our investment.
The investment was also welcomed by the Minister of Natural Resources and the Environment, Robert Poussard, who described it as a milestone by Esso Exploration and Guyana Production Limited. He noted that previous investments made by CGX Energy, Repsol, and Darko Guyana Company, the Takadu Oil and Gas, and Nabi Oil and Gas companies were based on the rich potential of local hydrocarbon resources.
Now that Exxon Mobil is close to exploration drilling, I have no doubt that due consideration will continue to be given to the issues of environmental and safety requirements, and we were just reassured in the presentation, as well as corporate social responsibilities. The government encourages both new and incumbent operators to engage all stakeholders for development of this sector, which in the long term can be transformative for the country.
The Exxon president for exploration, Dr. Eric Oswald, in brief remarks, said the company, which was described as the largest refiner of petroleum products in the world, has a long history of using science and innovation to bring energy to supply the world's needs.
It's a company with a long culture. It's 130 years old. You'll find it's very conservative and very careful. It's run by scientists and engineers. And so what we undertake, we undertake very carefully. And that might be reflected in a couple sayings that you'll hear many times as you interact with the company. The first of those is safety first, and you've already been exposed to that with Jeff's introductory comments. The second is how we get things done, or how we get results, is just as important as the results themselves.
The initial agreement was signed with government in 1999, and with the formal opening of the company's local headquarters at Lot 99 Newmarket Street, Georgetown, mobilization will begin in the first quarter of 2015. Drilling and exploration, initially at the Lisa location, will begin in the second quarter of next year. The total area allotted to Exxon covers some 26,806 square kilometers. President Ramatar on November 12th led the distribution of the $10,000 education grant to parents and guardians of public school children at Paramakatoy in Region 8. He also visited Cato, where the construction of one of the country's largest secondary schools is on the way. In the Amerindian community, the head of state underscored the need for children to be educated and outlined government's investments in the sector to ensure that there are opportunities for all children. He was accompanied by Education Minister Priya Manikchand and Minister within the Ministry of Finance, Juan Edgel.
And if we see our interior as one of the new frontiers for development, that our interior got great possibilities of helping to advance the development of Guyana, then it is important that we arm our people, we give them the necessary groundings so that they will be able to do so. And most important is to give the children an opportunity.
The president observed that when the move was made to bring Amerindian students to attend President's College in Georgetown, the opposition objected, stating that the standard of the school would be lowered.
They said that if we bring the students there, that we were bringing down the standards of the school. What were they implying? What were they really saying? They were saying that you are inferior to the rest of people on the coastline. That is what they meant when they said that we will bring down the standard of the school. But we persevered and we continued. And you know, about 2 or 3 years ago, you know who topped the school? The same President's College, who they said they didn't want children from these areas to go to. It was an Amerindian girl from the Northwest District.
As part of efforts to further Amerindian children's education, the government has also provided solar panels to hinterland communities so that they can study better at nights. The Because We Care initiative was approved in the 2014 national budget and targets each child in the public school sector. Over 188,400 families are expected to benefit from the initiative that will cost government some $2 billion Ghana dollars. The president also took the time to commission the Paramakatoy Primary School and had a first-hand look at the $750 million Cato Secondary School, which is expected to be completed by the middle of 2015. The president gave the first donation as the Salvation Army launched its Christmas appeal. The traditional Christmas kettle launch by the Salvation Army saw President Donald Ramatar giving the first donation to the charitable cause. He delivered the feature address as the annual appeal for public donations by the religious-based organization began, marking the start of the festive season at the Georgetown Club. President Ramatar said it was with great pleasure that he would launch the fund, which would go towards assisting the highly appreciated work of the organization.
Your old mottos and your objectives, your main objectives, are similar to what we try to do in government. You try to help the poor, help to give support to the vulnerable in the society, and we ourselves continuously try to do that at every level of our society. Our program that is going on right now, that has taken me only recently at the top of Paramakatoy and Cato Mountains to assist children in school so that they can have a possibility of having a sound education and being able to help themselves in many regards.
The fact that only Guyana and Bolivia have a non-contributory state pension was also highlighted by the president. The help that the Salvation Army is giving to the vulnerable, such as recovering drug addicts, was also praised by the head of state.
Who, for one reason or the other, found themselves turning the wrong path in life and ending up in trouble where they really need help. And the help that you extend is one of the best type of help that I can think about. It is the help to try to give people to what the fancy term that is used today, to empower them, to give them the capacity to be able to help themselves and in the process to help others.
Giving brief remarks, Divisional Commander Major Emerson Cumberbatch said that in addition to the core churches that the Salvation Army operates, it also has several other initiatives, including a feeding program.
The hostel, the church, the center, all of them, the feeding program, all of them goes as part of the Salvation Army ministry here in Guyana. Our ministry, my dear friends, is to save souls. And one way or the other, we are out to save the souls. And after we have them saved, our aim is to minister to them, grow the saints, all right? It is all good to save them, but to see them grow.
Officers of the Salvation Army will be stationed at strategic locations near popular stores and businesses as they solicit donations from the general public to fund their charitable programs. Government provides a subvention for the organization's drug rehab program, but it is dependent on the goodwill of the general public to support its various initiatives. The President addressed several current issues during a press conference on November 14. There are some members of the political opposition, President Donald Ramotar said, who seem bent on pursuing their own narrow personal agendas instead of putting national development first. Speaking to the media recently, the President was asked about his efforts to reach out to the political opposition since he took office in November of 2011. It was recalled that he broke from tradition and personally addressed the first sitting of the current 10th Parliament, offering to work with the opposition who had gained a one-seat majority following the general elections.
It didn't bring all the results that I wanted. I thought that we could have developed a much better working relationship. And I thought that if we only base ourselves on what is in the interests of the people of our country, that I thought that there were many, many areas that we could have found agreement on. But you know what happened. I need not elaborate. Maybe personal political agendas seems to have been more important for some people than national development.
The President has repeated that his government is willing to meet and have dialogue on national issues. The government had reached out and sought to include the political opposition on issues such as the anti-money laundering bill, the Amalia Falls hydropower project, and the construction of the Marriott Hotel. Despite efforts which included, for example, the provision of confidential contract documents and site visits, which, despite initial agreement, failed to gain acceptance from the political opposition. That's all in this week's diary for the period November 8 to November 14, 2014. Before we go, these were some of the highlights. President Farouk's Parliament meets stakeholders. The fallen of the two great wars and other conflicts are remembered, and one of the world's largest petroleum companies is set to begin local operations. Do join us again for the next program when we will bring you more of the President's activities. I'm Paul McAdam, thanking you for joining us. For more information, do contact us via email or visit our website.